For an American soldier in Iraq, there's no more dangerous neighborhood than what has come to be known as the Sunni Triangle, especially the area west of Baghdad around the town of Fallujah. American soldiers are fighting a classic counterinsurgency, but if they're ever to win it, the first thing they'll have to do is pacify this key piece of Iraqi real estate. As the war against insurgents grinds on in the Sunni Triangle, few battalions have suffered as many casualties as this one from the 1st Infantry Division, the Army's fabled Big Red One. This is the anti-American heartland, and few platoons have been hit as many times as Sergeant Joseph Mosner's. Over his desk, he's hung the torn uniform of a wounded colleague who, in the middle of a firefight, came back to help him, using his own sleeve as a tourniquet.
When I get ready to go on a mission, that motivates me. It helps me focus on what's going on out there, and also looking at it brings you to reality. When you see one of your friends get hurt or even get killed, as a person, it hurts. You try to hold this image that you're a man and you don't have feelings, but you know, you get teary-eyed and you lost one of your friends. Let's go, dude. But as a soldier, you get a little nervous because now you've just seen something happen that could possibly happen to you.
And it did. 3 weeks after we rode with him on this mission, Sergeant Mosner was seriously wounded by a remote-control bomb.
Apparently when the bomb went off, it took out top of my head. And right now in the front, I've got a chunk of my head missing down to the skull, and in the back also, back here. It took off the left side of my face.
Today, he's recovering at the Walter Reed Army Medical Center in Washington. But what Sergeant Mosner wants most is to be back in Iraq with his platoon.
You feel kind of bad because your guys are over there and you're not. And they're putting themselves in danger every single day.
Major John Nagel is the battalion's operations officer. 9 of his men have been killed and 59 have been wounded.
Lieutenant Todd Bryant was killed by this roadside bomb. He was a good friend of mine, a great American, a fine young man, West Point graduate from last year, and his funeral was last week.
Nagel is a counterinsurgency expert. He's written a book on it. Now he's putting theory into practice, trying to stop the deadly attacks on his troops.
Our enemy is dastardly, cowardly, but damn good.
How tough is it to fight this kind of war?
I was a tank platoon leader in the first Gulf War, and it was, by comparison to this, a very easy war to fight. In this war, the enemy doesn't wear uniforms, doesn't fight using conventional tactics. He will fight us and then disappear, fire a few shots, drop his weapons, and merge into the crowd. And you're left with a very unpalatable choice at that point. You can fire indiscriminately into the crowd, making the war bloody, messy, or you can do what we do. You hold back, you circle the crowd, you gather intelligence and try to find out who it was.
Easier said than done, because in the Sunni Triangle it's difficult to determine who is a combatant and who is not. And this sometimes results in unintended consequences, which the military says it can't avoid. Civilians sometimes get caught in the crossfire. They get shot, or worse, they get killed. Last April, when a crowd was demonstrating against the American presence in Fallujah, at least 15 of the protesters were killed by U.S. troops. Since then, the army has had an increasingly difficult time putting down the insurgency. The imam of Fallujah's main mosque was arrested for inciting violence against the Americans, but his deputy keeps up the stream of vitriol. Go! Even though they're hunted down by overwhelming U.S. force, the militants are bold enough to fire rocket-propelled grenades at these soldiers on a night raid. Today, when American forces enter Fallujah, they are greeted by graffiti that says Fallujah will be America's graveyard. The 82nd Airborne is in charge of Fallujah. Lieutenant Colonel Brian Drinkwine says This is no place for kid gloves.
The enemy is like a cancer. He's had 35 years to grow, and when you have someone who has cancer, you go in both with a scalpel and carve out the heart of it, and if you just turn away from it too early, it'll continue to grow back, and it may grow back stronger.
Adding to this climate of tension, while we were in Fallujah, 5 more residents were being buried after an incident which makes clear how different both sides' versions of these events often are. This family sells chickens in Fallujah's market. One night, while delivering their goods, American soldiers, believing they were under attack from insurgents, fired hundreds of rounds into the family's truck. Jassim Hamid is the head of the family.
I came face to face with terror. Bodies sprawled on the ground, my truck destroyed, dead chickens scattered about. I couldn't believe my eyes.
It was your sons lying there.
Yes, I saw 2 bodies lying in the truck.
That night, were there any guns in the truck? Do your family carry guns for protection, self-defense?
No, we never carry guns, because we know there are often American checkpoints on the way.
The Americans say that they thought that it was an attack by militants on them, and that's why they fired on that truck. Is that possible?
That's impossible. It was a truck full of chickens and kids. And do you think these kids would attack American soldiers?
And one of those children was still missing, even though the family has spent 2 weeks searching local hospitals. The incident happened here last November 11th. The next day, this is what the press release from the 82nd Airborne said. Paratroopers successfully defended this Jordanian hospital and their own forward base from an attack by Iraqi combatants. In total, the 82nd Airborne Division soldiers killed 6 aggressors and wounded 4. When we asked the brigade commander, Colonel Jeffrey Smith, to tell us what happened that night, he said he didn't know of any child killed in the incident.
The truck that is in question did engage our patrol with a weapon. Could they have been innocent civilians? I don't know. I mean, I cannot explain why the truck fired on us.
Is it possible that because of the previous threats that your soldiers could have felt so at risk and so vulnerable and so threatened that they would have fired on this truck?
The answer is no. This truck that is in question engaged the vehicle. There was no mistaken identity, or there was no mistake on who was firing at who.
Did you know that a kid was killed?
What age are you talking about?
A 9-year-old child?
No, there was no, not to my knowledge, there was no 9-year-old child killed in that vehicle.
You don't know that a 9-year-old child was killed?
I do not know that. It was not reported to me that a 9-year-old child was killed. And to my knowledge, there were no children in that truck that night.
We asked Colonel Smith to check again. And before we left, he came back with new information.
I'm sad to report to you that our subsequent communication with the battalion that was involved in this incident indicates there was at least 1 child that was killed that was in the truck.
And the second child?
We understand now that there may have been a second child involved or a second child in the vehicle, and we're going to continue to investigate to find out where this child is.
It's Lieutenant Colonel Marshall Hagan's job to investigate these incidents that involve his troops.
That incident in that truck goes back to Sergeant Smith's right to self-defense. He saw muzzle flashes coming from that truck. He defended himself and his Bradley crew. If there are civilians in there, that's unfortunate and it's a tragedy. If we receive fire, we will return fire.
Have you got the gun?
No, we don't.
You didn't find any shell casings?
I haven't asked the question whether we found shell casings.
At what point did you realize a child was dead, had been killed?
I found out yesterday.
Is that unusual?
Yes, it is. The fact that children were killed and I didn't know about it is an anomaly.
What's also unusual is that even amongst the Americans in Fallujah, there were different interpretations of the incident. Captain Ryan Houston is the community liaison officer from a neighboring unit, and his translator is related to the family of the chicken vendors.
They work with the Americans, so I don't know why they would have any intention to fire on Americans. But the problem is that the vehicle in front of them did have intentions and fired on the Americans.
It was Captain Houston who solved the mystery of the missing boy.
Oh yeah, he's alive. He's being taken care of very well.
13-year-old Ahmed was finally located in the American military hospital in Baghdad and reunited with his mother. He tried to comfort her. "Don't cry," he says. "I'll be able to walk again soon." But when Ahmed asks for his father and younger brother, his mother can't bear to tell him that they were killed in that shooting. Captain Houston says the army now has to try to win back at least this family's hearts and minds.
If we attack it in the right way by, making sure that they're taken care of, admitting our mistake, and making sure that they get compensated, I think it really helps out by their culture. It eases some of the pain and it shows respect to them.
The army has not admitted that they made a mistake when they fired on the chicken truck, even though they have paid Ahmed's mother $2,000 for his injuries and for the death of his younger brother. But so far, the family has not received compensation or an apology for the 3 adults who were killed in the shooting and who are now buried here. If you don't get compensation and if you don't get the apology that you want from the Americans, what will you do? Will you take revenge?
No. No. How can we? We'll leave it in God's hands.
And so another milestone is marked on the trail of bad blood that divides ordinary Iraqis from the Americans who came here to help them. Something Sergeant Mosner ponders as he gets patched up for another tour of duty.
A lot of people like us over there, and of course a lot of people don't like us over there. But I think our presence over there is needed right now, and I think we're doing a good thing. And people are getting hurt, yes they are, but we need to be over there.